Hi, welcome back to class. And this week we are moving on into Module 12, which is Chapter 11. And the workload this week's a little lighter than normal because we're going to kind of pivot to something a little different as we move on. So this week is kind of a continuation um, through white ethnics. And so we're going to look at Jewish Americans. And this is really a continuation of last chapter. In fact, you'll notice in this chapter, there's a lot of comparison to Italian Americans with the Jewish Americans. And that's mostly due to the fact that they had a very similar course of migration, but they did differ in some ways, and you'll see that in the chapter. So this week we're just going to read the chapter, and the extra questions are going to be based on some other videos on intersectionality, and I'll get to those in a second here. So you'll just carry through with the Module 11 discussion and read Chapter 11, and then we're going to have 3 videos on intersectionality just to get you acquainted with the theory in case you haven't done this before or have been exposed to intersectional theory before. And then we'll complete a Dropbox assignment based on that. And then you'll have 2 discussion topics again in Module 12 discussion. And there is a quiz as usual, on the chapter of the book. So intersectionality is going to be described here by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is the person who, I don't want to use the term coined the term because as you'll see in a video we'll watch later on, it irritates some sociologists when you use a term like coined a term. But she put this name to a particular case, and it moved on to looking at Kimberly Crenshaw is concerned with law and social policy, and so she used intersectionality to describe this. So you're going to watch 3 videos. The first one's from Khan Academy, and it's a basic primer on what intersectionality is. The next video is Kimberly Crenshaw being interviewed about intersectionality. And the third one is a speech she makes. It's about 30 minutes long, and she really gets a little deeper into intersectionality. So I want you to use these 3 videos and write a short paper, a page minimum, discussing what intersectionality is and why it's important to understand. And this will help you with the discussion. And the reason we're doing this is something I used to discuss earlier in the class. But what happened is we were discussing a bunch of other terms. Intersectionality kind of got jumbled up with the other ideas. So I'm trying this semester to move it later on in the class. I was going to do this a couple of weeks ago, but I want to have it be in a time when it will flow well. So I think this will be the time, and we'll do this discussion now, and then in a couple of weeks we're going to pivot with this and look at Patricia Hill Collins, who's a sociologist who I'm sure you're familiar with, who takes this idea and goes a little further with it. And so we're going to use a speech from her to look at how she does that. Our discussion forum is going to look at 2 basic questions. We're going to look at ethnicity versus religious identity. That's something that comes up with the Jewish Americans. So you're going to discuss the tendency for Jewish Americans to see their identity in ethnic rather than religious terms. And you're going to discuss how that shaped their cultural assimilation. Then second, very simple question. I want you to answer, what is intersectionality and why is it important to understand? So that assignment you do earlier, you're just going to boil it down to a little bit of writing so that you don't have to put a whole page here. Please don't cut and paste a page from your earlier assignment and move it to this. But put a paragraph or 2 discussing intersectionality and why it's important to understand. So you're going to boil down what you wrote, condense it, And so taking a thought and condensing it is a good skill to have. We're going to try to do that here. But it's not going to be a very hard week. And like I said, we're going to take this and we're going to move along with the pivot on the theory. So if you have any questions, make sure you email me. Other than that, you guys are doing great. I'm really happy with how the class is going and the discussions that you're having. And keep up the good work. Thank you.